ノリでやめます。
The world is a moving organ, a complex machine or system filled with an remarkable amount of interacting pieces and purposes, sometimes working together in chunks, sometimes opposing each other, sometimes just one cell, just one cog disrupts whole sections of the area it occupies, inhabiting and sending rippling effects through the rest of the device or organism, but really, that's not sometimes. In fact, constantly there are individual elements affecting the normalcy of the whole, to the extent where they don't seem so individual at all, and instead seem like some sort of natural chaos that keeps the system ticking forward. It's these sorts of things that lead to what we would call real-world miracles. The sort of mind-blowing alignments and unlikelihoods, big and small, that lead people to say things like, reality really is stranger than fiction. And yeah, that's true, because fiction has to set and operate by its own set rules within the given information and environment. And broadly, I think that that's how it should be. I mean, it's largely a reason that we're able to have compelling narratives. The way we experience narratives is something special too, but I think that it also is sometimes subject to a blinding bias that makes us unaware of the way that a work is created. Today, I aim to elevate your view of, and how you look at, Death Note 15 years after its release, and not with some half-baked dumb theory, but with facts that everyone has intuitively always had, just organized correctly, as far as I know, for the first time. I hope you enjoy. Reasonably speaking, there is a somewhat decent likelihood that your opinion is lower of the final arc of Death Note, and if you're an anime only, I find that far much more reasonable, considering roughly half of the manga was adapted into only a third of the anime, meaning there were unfortunate cuts to aggress the pace of the anime in a way that I did feel was weird and left out lots of important details and moments. On top of that, the last arc starts right after a time skip, and I feel right after narratively one of the most iconic moments in anime happens. It's not weird at all to feel out of place there, to not know what to think about the show going forward. I made a video 6 months ago covering the thematic aspects of the major Death Note characters and how I thought it gave an understandable context to each of their failings in the form of one of Death Note's very interesting themes, sort of explaining why Death Note's story is as it is. And that video was super well received by everyone. I appreciate it, by the way, and I think that it really grabbed at something untalked about within Death Note. But I still received a consistent sentiment in many of the comments. Nier cheated, L did all the work, and then Nier took the reward, and lastly, Nier got lucky. Even that this series was something they absolutely loved, but they just had to admit it got bad at the end. And you might even mirror this sentiment too, to some amount or another, and honestly, whether or not you do, you will be equally entering uncharted territory with me from now on. Something nearly everybody loves about Death Note are the mind games. It's quite literally one of its defining aspects. The back and forths, the twists, and this is largely due to the inclusion of well-considered and thought-out moments that protect characters from threats that never actually materialize. From the largely inconsequential tennis game, to the scene where Light and L talk about what Light's opinion on Kira's photographs are. These are moments that serve to give insight into the way that the characters think, while not really offering either of them substantial footing on each other in the narrative that does transpire. Other moments are sprinkled in as well, like Light going through all the effort to find a place to hide his notebook at an abandoned building at one point, and another when he makes a secret drawer compartment in his room. These are a little different from the previous moments because, in theory, Light's little sister or mom may have stumbled in on the notebook otherwise in the story. And we can imagine that them stumbling in still happens in the version of the story we got, but we just don't see that in our story because it ended up being non-consequential due to his action. Both of these types of moments in the writing give the feeling of an operating system with plenty of pieces being paid and add to the huge payoffs, because it feels like any of these stars could align at any moment. The stars do align though, and not just once or twice for one character. Firstly, near at the end of the story, Nier is manipulating Mello and using him to make Kira make more desperate moves. While doing that, he is taking a world-class elite team and trying to prod at each of Kira's major connections. Eventually, there is an inconsistency found in Mikami's schedule where they catch him dozens of hours before the final meeting and are able to barely put together the twist that will verify Nier's victory. If they didn't catch this small inconsistency in Mikami, even if Nier was doing everything right and everything within his power, he did require luck to pull this off. Now I want to go into one of the first major moments of the series. The death of Rei Penber, and more importantly Naomi Misoda, is in a lot of ways Light's first major instance of a complete lack of empathy toward crushing those who did literally no wrong to the world. The story goes out of its way to set up Naomi and Rei's relationship before Light gets the victory. There are fun moments like Light getting scared that his dad might call him turning off his phone that are very similar to moments that I mentioned earlier. Him worrying about being seen as pushy or intimidating, her giving him the wrong name. This sequence is one of the best in the series, in my opinion. However, do you remember how this sequence started? Well, either way, we're about to cover it, but before we do, I want you to hesitate on where you think that this video is going, because I almost guarantee by the end I am not making the full point that you'll assume that I am. So, okay. Light manages to find out about Naomi Curtis and manages to stop her from getting to the FBI because of some unfortunate things that are well set up in the story. Things like L inducting the remaining task force in a private location, following Rei Penber's death in order to better define and get the situation under a neutral vantage point. He also has detectives keep their phones off while they're with him. This makes L unreachable to Naomi, and also causes Light's dad to obviously not come home or be reachable to his wife. The actual moment that instigates this meeting, though, is Light just happening to be around the moment Light's mom asks his sister if she'll take extra clothes to his dad. Without a strong reason, he offers to take the clothes instead, and it just so happens that when accounting for walking on his own and Naomi's own schedule and decisions, at roughly the exact same time of day, Light happens to appear at the station at maybe the 5-minute window where Naomi is telling them who she is and how she has information for L that could be crucial. She is a total unknown to Light in the story, but suddenly, due to laundry day boredom and pinpoint timing, Light finds the linchpin that allows him to prevent Naomi from possibly bringing the story to an end in the first arc of the story. Now, Light was doing everything within his power and knowledge as well as he could, but he would have still lost without these extreme variables, this good amount of luck. I'm holding off on my point for now, and I ask that you reserve where you think I'm going, because it seems obvious, but I swear it's not. This is important groundwork, though, so I want you to continue thinking about this on your own as we continue. The second major section of the Death Note anime is, in my view, the inclusion of Misa Amane, and I think if you view her shallowly, I personally find her to be an extremely interesting piece to Death Note's puzzle, and a more consistent chaotic element that helps give the series this sense of progression narratively. She's definitely not the most common person you would see, but she's an idol, she's eccentric and extroverted. She also happens to be one of the luckiest girls in the world. It's stated multiple times in the story that it is nearly unheard of for a timeless Shinigami to fall in love, or to be willing to prolong a human life at the cost of their own. The mindset of a Shinigami, a timeless yet endlessly bored being, and the way that they view humanity is a really fun addition to the narrative. But Misa only meets Light, and is who she is, due to Light killing the right people. One, but more rarely, having a Shinigami step in and keeping her life going. The Shinigami seems to be a longtime acquaintance or friend of the Shinigami Rem. So after the Shinigami's death, Rem develops an attachment to Misa. Her friend did die to keep her breathing after all, so in my mind, sort of out of respect for that friend's wish, she also wants to be a sort of deformed guardian angel for her. This is something so separate from the real world that we wouldn't actually know the likelihood of this happening if not for the story spelling it out like a miracle. a stars align unlikelihood. It's the element that introduces her, though, and has no effect on the central narrative, so nothing, I imagine, would strike almost anyone as uncheap or fair here. It just serves as a fun way to set up her and Rim as interesting, unique characters. The real aspect is how Light is able to utilize this loyalty to ultimately kill L, not by outwitting him, but by slowly pushing Rim into a corner where Rim has to choose their own life or Light's, despite Light's blatantly awful manipulation. Misa doesn't seem to care, because her personality of naivete focuses on whimsical ideas of love and devotion that cause her to ignore that. These, in my eyes, are the most lucky moments in the series. The way Light is able to get information and deal with Naomi, and the way Misa and Rem give Light a far more straightforward avenue to the end of L, without learning his name. And so, Nir's luck, while at the beginning, is undeniably there. He totally gets lucky. It is also something undeniably given to Light to a much greater extreme many more times in all arcs of the series, even from the beginning. The final moment of luck just happens to be on Nir instead of Light. Death Note sucks and was never good. Haha, thank you for coming to my TED Talk. What's up? Of course not. No, that's not what I'm saying. That would be one of the stupidest takeaways from this video. I'm not going for that. And anybody who's seen Death Note's brilliant writing and instances that it intertwines with its narrative already know that. Is it always exactly the same quality then? Well, I'm not saying or making an assertion into that either, and honestly that's kind of boring to talk about in my opinion anyway. Although it would be far easier for someone to finish this video with a clickbait, half-baked conclusion like that without doing any more research, and pretend and end it like I said. But, like I said, we're here for the truth, and we're taking this another route. My first point, which I hope to have proved here, is that within regards to luck, lucky moments and characters getting lucky, this was never new, never badly done, and never a problem. But what is that supposed to say about the series? And this is where the video gets fun. Far from some expectedly cynical, nihilistic viewpoint that has barely any philosophy to extrapolate from it, Death Note's writing being this way actually serves a thematic purpose that seeps through its entire story. Buddhism and Buddhist traditions get many nods throughout the story, like how Light goes to Mu when he dies, not heaven or hell. Mu, which is a Japanese way of referring to Buddhist traditions and the idea of the without or the lacking of. In other words, nothingness. He goes there as punishment, as it says the user of the Death Note can neither go to heaven nor hell. But why is this significant? You see, Death Note has 108 chapters, in reference to, specifically, the 108 defilements of man in Buddhism. This being different sins, like anger, murder, scheming, arrogance, blasphemy, callousness, and many, many more. Each New Year, as a tradition in Japan, many people go to temples and shrines and ring the bell 108 times in order to seek forgiveness from the gods for their moral misdeeds. It quite literally rings in the New Year with a fresh you. I mentioned at the very start that this world is a moving organ, a machine, a system of countless moving parts. The way things react and cause rumbles in the system are always affected by other rumblings and reactions. The natural state of this chaos is, in Buddhism, the product of karma. Many people have a misguided idea that karma is some godlike being or structure that punishes people when they're bad, but it really isn't. It's actually the idea that the rumblings and reactions you make in this world, if positive, will return to you positively in return, and the negative effects that you have on the system will be pushed back to you in the system. From the beginning, and fundamental to Death Note's structure, has always been this core idea that you have control over your own actions and your fate. You have control over the positive or the negative things you put in the world, and you have control over how you deal with the situations that come your way. Because any way you cut it, all these quote-unquote lucky moments that happened to Light at the beginning of the series, during the Misa arc, and to Nir during the end, none of these lucky moments still would have even been possible if none of these people had done everything in their power to use that luck to their advantage. If they hadn't perfectly worked as hard as they could, when the lucky moment came, it wouldn't have become lucky. They wouldn't have been able to act upon it. So in that way, those unchecked actions toward and against a system that negatively affects it will cause you to become alien to the elements within the system, and in return will force you to reap the chaos that you sow. Personally, this gives me an entirely new narrative and way of looking at the overall structure of Death Note and of the last arc, but it also shows a narrative and thematic consistency that is unparalleled in most other media that I've consumed. Something so incredibly in your face, yet not cryptic at all, just there to see, but also incredibly subtle, that it acts as a bedrock for the character's narrative and other themes to play over. So while somebody who hasn't seen the show in 10 years might still snidely write, "You can't change my mind, you cheated," I hope you're listening. I hope that regardless of how you feel about the series overall, that you can still listen here and stand with me in awe of this incredibly well-written series, and perhaps understand it even greater than before. If you thought the video was interesting, please like and comment. I help share and promote this. These videos aren't exactly easy to make since I'm trying not to pull stuff out of thin air here. Sorry it's been so long, and thanks to everybody who came to my birthday stream. Hope that you all drop by on my Twitch or support me on Patreon for Patreon chat and Twitch contests. And lastly, thanks for everyone being patient on this one. Thanks to Whizbang2093, Friendly Neighbor, My Name is Klein, Daniel Frousing, VCTF, and all of my other Twitch and Patreon supporters. Until, hopefully, much sooner than last time, I'll see you then.